Across Chile, including here in the capital, Santiago, riot police have been breaking up student protests for the past 8 months. Almost every week on the streets, these young people are out in force demonstrating.
La tele miente aquí en Chile. Nosotros exigimos una educación gratuita de calidad blanca.
Demonstrators are going. Let's go.
For 2 weeks in October, fault lines followed the student movement in Chile to find out what's driving this frustration and to ask whether a battle over education has become something much bigger. Liceo Miguel Luis Amunategi is one of Chile's oldest public schools. Like hundreds of others across the country, it was occupied, or what students call in toma, for 6 months. When we visited, it had become the center of operations for the new student movement in schools. Instead of going to classes, the students were organizing and planning their next actions. The takeovers, which also took place at universities, have left the public school system paralyzed for much of the academic year. All over the country, police have raided schools like this one numerous times. Alfredo Villalma is 17 and the spokesperson for this high school movement.
Bueno, este es una sala de clase, un salón de clase, y este está exactamente en las mismas condiciones que el día que nosotros nos tomamos el liceo. No se le ha hecho absolutamente ningún cambio, ya igual de sucio que cuando nosotros estuvimos acá antes de la toma. Tampoco hay un sistema de calefacción y las luminarias son generalmente malas. Nosotros estamos acá desde las 8 de la mañana hasta las 4 de la tarde, por lo que la jornada, la gran parte del día lo tenemos que pasar en nuestros salones de clase, que son, si no parecidos, iguales a estos.
Education in Chile is prohibitively expensive. Of all the countries in the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Chile has the highest proportion of private funding for education. But the quality doesn't match the cost. In subjects like reading, Chile ranks bottom. The free market-based approach was implemented by the military dictator Augusto Pinochet and his economic advisors at the end of his rule in 1990. It decentralized schools and cleared the way for a private system, one that's heavily subsidized by government vouchers in the primary and secondary levels that get distributed to the private sector.
Por lo tanto, nosotros con nuestras acciones, con las tomas de los liceos, con las marchas, los paros y las huelgas, estamos buscando erradicar lo que es la educación como un bien de mercado y pasar a tener una lógica social, en que la educación, vuelva a ser gratuita, vuelva a estar en manos del Estado, no vuelva a ser una educación segmentatoria. Hoy tenemos una educación que busca segmentar.
The government aims for Chile to be ranked as a so-called developed country by 2018. But the majority of Chileans won't necessarily reap the benefits of that new label. The country is one of the most unequal in the world.
Hoy día Chile es profundamente desigual, y lo había señalado. Pero el sistema educacional hoy día está pensado para seguir profundizando y reproduciendo esa desigualdad. O sea, su principal objetivo es ese.
Camila Vallejo is one of the main leaders of the student movement.
Entonces, eso genera mucho descontento, porque hoy día el problema de desigualdad es tan preocupante y se siente tanto que cuando se demuestra que la educación está perpetuando esa desigualdad, se dice, no, tenemos que combatir esto.
The 23-year-old geography student from the University of Chile has become the movement's principal spokesperson and now serves as vice president of the Confederation of Chilean Students.
Nosotros estamos peleando por la educación justamente para terminar con esta violencia estructural de desigualdad, de oportunidad, de exclusión, que reproduce delincuencia y lumpen.
Vallejo and the student movement have been able to mobilize massive protests across Chile. Hundreds of thousands have been turning out to demand free, quality public education and an end to privatization and profiteering from the system.
Lo que el pueblo necesita es educación
Even after dozens of student marches this year, like this one that we witnessed, turnout remains high. The last time so many people took to the streets here was in the 1980s, when protesters demanded an end to Pinochet's rule.
Are you expecting violence today? Are the students prepared for that?
We are always prepared for that because the police are always acting with violence against the students, and our young people we have learned, we have developed just self-defense. That's it, self-defense.
The battle's right there. The police are spraying the crowd with water cannons.
Like most of the marches, this one ended in a violent confrontation with the Chilean militarized police, called the Carabineros, using tear gas and water cannons.
Go, go, go!
We're trapped! Stay on your feet! Stay on your feet!
The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights has denounced the Carabineros for disproportionate use of force in breaking up the demonstrations.
Nosotros queremos cuidar esa certeza que le damos a los inversionistas, es que en Chile hay un Estado de Derecho, en Chile hay certezas jurídicas y las instituciones funcionan. Y es por eso que vamos a actuar con mucha energía para que estos grupos radicales entiendan que esas actitudes son antidemocráticas.
I was going to ask, that kind of repression, that kind of aggression from the government, is that common in the government here since Pinochet?
It has historical roots, and those historical roots go back to the dictatorship. So yes, it does. It's supposed to have changed under democracy, but a lot of incidents have characterized this student movement where you get the feeling that the police feels a little bit too sure about how far it can go.
In 1970, Salvador Allende was elected as Chile's president, the country's first democratically elected Marxist with ties to Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. Intent on stopping Chile from becoming another Cuba, U.S. President Richard Nixon ordered the CIA to undermine and overthrow Allende. Just 3 years later, on September 11, 1973, the Chilean military bombed the presidential palace. Shortly after, the military announced Allende had committed suicide.
Yo creo que Salvador Allende hay que recordarlo no solo por el 11 de septiembre, sino una persona que tuvo una trayectoria de más de 50 años. Era una persona consecuente que soñaba y aprendió e hizo soñar a la gente en el sentido que era posible hacer una sociedad que fuera más justa, más equitativa, más igualitaria en el lenguaje de hoy.
General Augusto Pinochet was named president, a dictatorship that would last almost 17 years. For his economic policy, Pinochet turned to a group of fringe economists who came to be known as the Chicago Boys. They studied under the famous free market economist Milton Friedman at the University of Chicago in a program organized by the U.S. government.
Durante el gobierno de Pinochet se hicieron las privatizaciones en un periodo en que no había democracia. Fue hecho de una manera poco transparente, se levantaron ciertas fortunas de la noche a la mañana, hay mucha concentración, realmente es una economía muy concentrada y entonces todo eso ha generado una gran concentración de la riqueza y una gran desigualdad. Yo creo que todo eso ha generado y todo esto vino de efectivamente el momento en que las políticas impuestas por los Chicago Boys fueron muy radicales.
And so I went to visit Pinochet with Friedman, me being the interpreter. And at some point, Friedman told Pinochet, or asked Pinochet, are you aware that by allowing this market economy, you will eventually have to relinquish power? And Pinochet said, yes, that's what I want democracy.
Rolf Luders was one of the original Chicago Boys. He ended up serving as Pinochet's finance minister. Pinochet will go down in history as a monster.
I know that this is the image people have abroad, yeah.
And do you have any regrets having worked with him?
No, because you see, I think that if you ask me what we did, or I did, let's say, you see, I contributed in some way to having an economy which is more prosperous.
Thousands of those who allied themselves politically with Allende and his ideas were murdered, tortured, or exiled by the brutal Pinochet regime, a regime that in many ways still has a hold on Chile today.
Today it's a muted legacy that has just basically shaped the last 20 years in terms of the constraints it's imposed on the political system. A binomial election system, a constitution that was written by a dictatorship, political power that was biased towards the right, a right-wing coalition that has ties still to the dictatorship. And that's again why the student movement is so interesting, because they're the first generation that has no recollection of the dictatorship and they really don't care anymore.
Until Pinochet came to power, public education was free. Today, it's a privatized system, and Chilean technical schools, colleges, and universities have the highest tuition fees among all OECD countries and the lowest public expenditure.
Nosotros hemos estado mucho tiempo hablando y peleando por la educación pública, para reivindicar el concepto de público, porque entendemos que hoy en día lo público prácticamente está desapareciendo.
Julio Maturana is a fifth-year engineering student at the University of Chile. Both he and his mother, Ana Franca, are angry about the level of debt they've had to take on to put Julio through college.
Finalmente, hoy todo se transformó en una gran tienda comercial, en un gran mercado de la educación, en que la gente invierte dinero para después tener más dinero, para después comprar cosas geniales, grandes, con las que uno después pueda verse bien y encajar en una sociedad.
Entonces está enferma la gente, está enferma por el consumismo, porque tiene que tener ese estándar de vida que todos, esa es la felicidad. Pero esa no es la felicidad, es una falsa, ¿eh? No es una felicidad real esa de la gente. Entonces, los malls están llenos, los supermercados están llenos, está todo lleno, pero las tarjetas están topadas, están copadas. Está todo endeudado, deudas en las tiendas comerciales, en todos lados. Hay un engaño muy grande en esta sociedad.
Well, the government has a huge agenda in higher education related with quality, with transparency, with reducing the cost for students to get into higher education.
We found a large disconnect between most of the Chileans we spoke to and the politicians who were making the policy decisions.
And also a strong agenda in preliminary education and primary and secondary education. So we're actually going to move forward in that agenda. We really think that free education for all students in higher education is not a just, fair and viable solution, mainly because it helps the wealthier people.
Eso es mentira. Es mentira. En Chile, los pobres y la mayoría de este país siempre hemos estado pagando los estudios de los más ricos. El problema es que nosotros tenemos que pagar dos veces. Primero, tenemos que pagar los impuestos más altos que ellos, y segundo, tenemos que volver a pagar la universidad, a pesar de que nosotros pagamos más impuestos que ellos. Entonces, cuando dicen de que no se está de acuerdo con que los más pobres paguen la educación de los más ricos, en realidad los ricos son 4.000 y los más pobres son millones.
Pinochet left office over 2 decades ago, but no Chilean government since has seemed able or willing to dismantle the education system he left as part of his legacy. La Concertación, a political leftist coalition that took power after Pinochet, has been criticized for not doing enough when it came into government.
When you go from 40% to 11% of people living under the poverty line, that is because they trickle down? Or that was because the concrete policy that we enact?
Ricardo Lagos criticized Pinochet on national television while the dictator was still in power, something nobody had done before. Lagos was eventually elected president in 2000.
I think that what we have been able to do in these 20 years, I was an important actor of what we did in these 20 years.
And I'm proud of what we did, because we did that in spite of the right-wing parties. But in many cases, we were unable to overcome all the rules of the game. It's not an excuse. It's simply that was the kind of transition that we have.
The irony is that we have had 2 decades of left-leaning government, center-left government at least, and they did very little in dealing with the structures of the economic policies that were set up by the Chicago boys during the Pinochet regime.
Social reforms and rapid economic growth helped reduce poverty. But the boom was disproportionately enjoyed by the wealthiest. Inequality grew, and tax policies still favored the rich.
In this country, since the year 2000, capital gains taxes have been abolished. So you make money in the stock market or in selling a house or selling land, you pay 0 taxes. Out of 16 million people, there are 5 million at the bottom, and these 5 million together makes less income than the 5 guys, including the president, by the way. President, one of the 5 guys, Mr. Piñera.
The only problem I see, if economic power eventually turns into political power, you see, if these guys who are very rich can effectively change laws in favor of themselves. Yeah, and then you have
one of those 5 guys is the president of the country now.
You have you know, he was.
Doesn't that seem like economic power becoming political power?
No, because he.
And hasn't he appointed people who are very rich, like Goldberg?
Well, but who are not very rich. I mean, there are people who have, compared with other people in Chile, have relatively high income, but they're not really rich at all. Now, Piñera is relatively rich, right?
He's one of the top 5.
It's one of the richer, but he's again not very rich compared with people who are rich in the United States.
Inequality, in fact, has driven some of Chile's marches to take on a wider meaning. On October 15th, we witnessed a global day of protest. Inspired by the Arab Spring, the Spanish indignance, the Greek protests, and the Occupy movement, hundreds of thousands turned out in more than 80 countries, including Chile.
Thousands of people are out marching here in Santiago today, but this is to have solidarity with cities across the world who are having their own demonstrations about people fed up with the inequalities of the current economic system. But it's also here in Chile about education being a human right.
In a recent poll, 2/3 of Chileans say they reject the country's current economic model, nearly the same amount that supported the student movement at the time of filming.
All right, students are running down the street. The demonstrators are going. Let's go.
This has always been also considered a model democracy, and now this is happening. So it throws up a lot of questions for the region as a whole, for the development model as a whole, for the Washington consensus policies, the policy prescriptions. We've now got economic stability, we've got some level of economic growth, but we really need to think about the other issues as well: social development, human development, education.
Por lo tanto, Chile es un país que está preparado para enfrentar una recesión. Somos el país más abierto al mundo. Chile tiene hoy más de 20 tratados de libre comercio, que significa entre regiones y países, que significa que tenemos tratado de libre comercio con el 95% del producto mundial. No existe ningún país más abierto al mundo que nosotros.
Y ese sistema educativo que tenemos en Chile hoy día ha sido el mejor experimento del capitalismo en el mundo. Y ese modelo educacional que viene del capitalismo en Chile nos está dando resultados y está dando señales de que ese sistema no puede seguir. Tal vez no es la mejor alternativa que tiene el mundo. Y en Chile la educación es un ejemplo de eso y no funciona. Entonces la muestra que se le puede dar al mundo con este movimiento estudiantil es de que este modelo capitalista está obsoleto.
In an unofficial plebiscite that was presented to Congress by the Teachers Union, about 90% of Chileans who voted were in favor of free education, an end to for-profit education, and constitutional reform. People have taken over and occupying a government building tonight. This just happened a couple of hours ago. They've asked people to come down and support it by being outside the building, but the police have blocked off the street and are not letting people close to where this demonstration is.
Lo que estamos pidiendo, toda la organización y todos los ciudadanos, es una nueva constitución, que se termine un sistema binominal, donde ese sistema lo que dice es que siempre van a ser uno de los dos grupos monopólicos de la política chilena que van a tener ellos el poder siempre. Entonces nos han quitado el mar lo distribuyeron entre todas las familias de los ricos.
Police are chasing us through the city with water and gas.
Because these people that got all the power in Chile, they will never give it. Like, okay, do whatever you want. Like, it's an oligarchy of families, the owner of the country. They will never give you like, okay, we'll give you the country and all the benefit of it. I think it will be violent anyway.
Ana Teju is a Chilean singer who grew up in France, having fled with her family during the time of Pinochet. Ana's song, Shock, is popular among student protesters. It's become a rallying call for change. While we were filming this show, the government increased education spending by 7.2%. It's far from the radical overhaul the students were demanding. They say it's a continuation of the old system, one that responds to investors' demands, not those of the students.
Se ha dicho hace mucho tiempo que Chile debe por lo menos duplicar el gasto público que hace en educación y además fortalecer la educación pública a través del financiamiento directo. No lo está haciendo, no está ni duplicando el gasto porque no hay aumento sustantivo y tampoco está poniendo en las distintas partidas los recursos necesarios para el fortalecimiento y el desarrollo de las instituciones públicas.
What are these student leaders going to do 5 years, 10 years down the line? Who are they going to be? They're going to be in politics, no question. And if the union leadership were half as competent as the leadership of the student movement, then we would have a revolution on our hands right now.
The vote preserved the current system, saving part of the legacy left by Pinochet's dictatorship. Students may have lost this battle, but they say they will keep fighting the war to dismantle this system and replace it with one where quality education and the mobility and opportunities it brings is a right, not a privilege. Winning that fight, they say, is just the first step towards making Chile just a little more equal.
It's happening everywhere. I think that's why you got so much, like, right now, people protesting. I think that when you put too many rats in a laboratory and you're testing all the time, there is a time when the rats asking to themselves, what I'm doing here, like, open the cage.